I never thought a favor from my mom would change everything. It started simple. She asked me to drop off some papers to her friend Clara, who lived just a few blocks away. Clara had been around for years, close to the family, the type who shows up at birthdays with wine and too much lipstick on the rim of her glass. I never paid her much attention growing up, but lately something felt different. Maybe it was me getting older, seeing people through a clearer lens. Or maybe she started looking at me differently too. She opened the door that day in yoga pants and a tank top, hair up in a messy bun, skin glowing in that effortless way that made you forget how to speak for a second. She smiled when she saw me, like she hadn't seen anyone in days. "You're a lifesaver," she said, taking the envelope from my hands and brushing her fingers lightly over mine. I thought it was nothing. People touch all the time. But the way she held eye contact felt intentional. Too long. Like she was waiting for me to say something else. I said, "No problem," and turned to go, but she asked if I wanted to come in for a drink. I hesitated. I wasn't supposed to linger, just drop off the documents and leave. But something about her tone made it feel casual, normal. Like it'd be rude to say no. So I stepped inside. Her place smelled like vanilla and something floral, and there was soft music playing from somewhere in the background. She poured me a glass of iced tea and sat across from me on the couch, legs tucked under her like she had nowhere else to be. We talked about school, my mom, how fast time moves. She listened closely, nodding, occasionally reaching out to touch my arm when she laughed. It was innocent enough, but the air between us felt charged. I left after 20 minutes, but I couldn't stop thinking about how close she had sat, how her eyes kept dropping to my lips when I talked. I figured I was imagining it. Maybe I wanted to see something that wasn't there. Clara was nearly twice my age, a friend of my mom's, and totally off-limits. Still, that night, I replayed our conversation over and over. Not the words, just the silences. The looks. The way she had said my name. A week later, my mom asked me to return a dish Clara had left at our place. I offered to take it over. I told myself it was just a chore. But the way my heart picked up when I knocked on her door again told me otherwise. This time, she looked surprised to see me, but pleased. She had a towel on her head, clearly just out of the shower, and wore a robe tied loosely around her waist. "You keep showing up like a knight in shining armor," she joked, taking the dish from my hands. I smiled awkwardly, trying not to look at the skin peeking from the edge of her robe. Just doing my part. She invited me in again. This time, she didn't offer tea. She poured herself a glass of wine, raised an eyebrow, and asked if I wanted one. I hesitated. "I won't tell your mom," she said with a smirk. So I took the glass. We sat closer than last time. The talk was looser, less filtered. She complained about dating apps and men her age who either had too much baggage or no ambition. I nodded along, trying not to sound too eager. She asked if I was seeing anyone. I said no. She said, "That's surprising." The compliment hit me in the chest. I didn't stay long, but I left feeling like something had shifted. That night, she followed me on Instagram, liked a few photos, sent a DM with a joke about one of my old posts. We started messaging. It was casual at first, memes, random thoughts, funny things that reminded her of me. But slowly, things got more personal. She told me about her divorce, about how lonely she'd been, how it was hard to talk to anyone about it without feeling judged. I told her I was around if she ever needed someone to talk to. She replied, "That means more than you know." From then on, we chatted almost daily. Late-night messages turned into voice notes. She said my voice was calming. I told her hers made me feel weirdly safe. She sent a photo of herself once. Nothing revealing, just her in bed with her dog curled up beside her. But something about it felt intimate, like she wanted me to see her life when no one else was around. The next time I saw her in person, the energy was different. We didn't pretend. We didn't play dumb. She opened the door and said, "Missed your face." I laughed it off, but inside, everything tightened. She didn't pour wine. She didn't even sit across from me. She sat beside me on the couch, close enough that our legs touched. She asked if I ever thought about leaving, just getting away from everything and starting over somewhere else. I said sometimes. She said she did too. She looked at me then, really looked, and I could feel something unspoken hovering in the air, waiting for one of us to reach for it. But neither of us moved. I left after half an hour, pulse racing, not entirely sure what had just happened. I started avoiding her after that, just to clear my head. But she noticed. Messaged less. Slower replies. Then finally she sent, "Did I do something wrong?" I stared at that message for a long time. Then I wrote back, "No, it's me. Just trying to figure some things out." She replied, "Same." It felt like we were both standing at the edge of something dangerous, knowing one step forward would change everything, but not knowing how to stop looking down. I told myself nothing had really happened, that we hadn't crossed any lines. But the more I tried to stay away, the more I wanted to see her again. Then one afternoon, my mom mentioned needing help organizing old photo boxes from the garage. Clara was going to come by to help. The thought of them in the same room again, Clara sitting next to my mom, smiling, acting normal, made my stomach twist. I offered to help too. When Clara arrived, she barely looked at me at first, but when our eyes met, there was a flicker. Recognition. Something that made it hard to breathe. Later, when my mom stepped out to take a phone call, Clara leaned over and whispered, "You don't have to avoid me." I didn't respond. I didn't even look at her. But every nerve in my body was screaming. That night, she messaged me again. Just 2 words. I remember. I didn't ask what she meant. I already knew. The line between what was and what could be had thinned to a thread. And we were both pulling at it. She stopped messaging for 3 days. No likes. No texts. Just silence. It bothered me more than I expected. I kept checking my phone, hoping to see her name pop up. When it finally did, it was short. "You around today?" I said yes without thinking. The idea of ignoring her didn't sit right. I told myself it was closure. Just a final conversation to clear the air. When I got there, she didn't say much. Just opened the door, stepped aside, and let me in. We sat on opposite sides of the couch. It felt like both of us were waiting for the other to speak. She broke the silence first. I didn't mean to make things weird. I told her she didn't. I lied. Everything had been weird since that first moment we really looked at each other and didn't pretend it was nothing. She looked at me differently now. Softer. Sadder. "You make me feel like I matter," she said. That hit me, because I knew she wasn't just talking about attention. She meant something deeper. Like I saw her for who she really was. And I think I did. I wasn't sure how it happened, but somehow I knew parts of her no one else did. She asked me about my plans, what I wanted to do next, what I was passionate about. It wasn't flirting. It was something more unsettling, genuine interest. I caught myself watching the way she brushed hair from her face, the way her voice dipped when she said my name. Every movement, every look felt deliberate. Not seductive, just aware. Like we were both navigating something fragile. I started noticing how easily we understood each other. We'd finish thoughts. Read silences. It stopped feeling strange. It started feeling natural. She mentioned an old memory, one time she and my mom had taken me to the beach when I was a kid. She said she remembered how curious I was, how I kept asking questions. "You haven't changed," she said. "Still searching for something." That stayed with me. I didn't know what I was searching for, but I knew I wasn't looking in the usual places anymore. We didn't touch. We didn't even move closer. But the emotional proximity was enough to rattle me. I left feeling more confused than ever. That night, she texted again. Just, "It's hard to act normal around you." I stared at that line for a long time, then typed, "I feel the same." She replied, "So now what?" That question lingered for days. We didn't talk, but something had changed. When I ran into her by accident at the store with my mom, she gave me a glance that said everything. No smile. No acknowledgement. Just tension. My mom didn't notice, but I could barely breathe the whole time. The weight of pretending was starting to show. I couldn't tell anyone. I didn't even fully understand it myself. A few days later, I got a message late at night. No words. Just a photo. Her, sitting on her bed in a hoodie, no makeup, hair messy. It was vulnerable, not flirty, just real. I responded with a simple, "You look tired." She said, "I haven't slept much. My mind won't stop." That opened the door again. We talked for hours about dreams, disappointments, regrets. She told me how trapped she felt in her own life. "Sometimes I forget what I'm even doing," she wrote. "And then I think about you." I asked if she ever wished she could go back in time. She said yes, but not to change things, just to feel something again. I told her I was scared of what I was feeling. She said, "Don't be. I am too." It was the first time she'd acknowledged it openly. We weren't dancing around it anymore. We were staring straight at it. From that night on, our conversations shifted. There was a softness, a tension, a readiness. We were still careful, but less than before. Every word had an edge. Every silence was louder. I started finding excuses to see her. She stopped pretending not to want me there. One time she asked if I could help fix something small in her house. I said yes before she even finished the sentence. When I showed up, she greeted me with a long look and nothing else. No small talk. No jokes. Just this pause, like something heavy was sitting in the space between us. I did the thing she asked for. She watched me the whole time. When I turned to say I was done, she just said, "You always show up." That sentence echoed in my head for days. I didn't know if it was a compliment or a warning. Maybe both. The next message came a day later. She said, "Do you ever think about what we're doing?" I typed, "All the time." She replied, "Then why does it still feel right?" There was no good answer, because nothing about it made sense, and yet it felt more real than anything else in my life. When I told her I couldn't stop thinking about her, she said, "Then don't." That was the first time I let myself imagine what it would be like to stop hiding, to stop caring what anyone thought. It scared me how easy it was to picture. We got braver. We talked late into the night. Started calling instead of texting. Her voice had this calmness that made everything else disappear. She'd ask me what I was doing, even if she already knew. She just wanted to hear my voice. One night, I asked her what she really wanted from me. She didn't answer at first. Then she said, "Something I can't have." I didn't know if she meant because of my mom or because of who we were to each other. Maybe both. But I felt the same. We were already too far in to go back, but not far enough to admit what was really happening. We talked in code, in implication. Like if we never said it out loud, it wasn't real. But it was. One night, I said I was going to stop by and return something I borrowed. She told me the door would be open. When I walked in, she was already sitting on the couch, looking at her phone. She looked up, smiled faintly, and just said, "I was hoping you'd actually come." We sat in silence for a while. I could feel her heartbeat without touching her. My hand was on the cushion between us. Hers moved closer. Slowly, deliberately. Our fingers touched. Just barely. But neither of us moved away. She whispered, "This isn't fair to you." I said, "It doesn't feel wrong." She didn't argue. We sat there like that for what felt like forever, fingers barely touching, hearts racing, nothing said but everything understood. When I left, she didn't say goodbye. Just, "Be careful." And I knew she wasn't talking about the drive home. That night, I couldn't sleep. Not because I felt guilty, but because I knew I was falling, and there was no bottom. The next time I saw her, she didn't speak right away. She just looked at me like she'd already made a decision. Something had shifted again, but this time, there was no hesitation. Her guard was gone. The air between us was full of things we hadn't said but both knew. She asked if I wanted coffee. I said sure, even though I didn't care about coffee. I was there because I couldn't stay away anymore, and she knew it. While she poured the drinks, she asked if I ever thought about what would happen if someone found out. I told her I didn't know. She said she did. "They'd never understand," she whispered. But her voice didn't carry fear. It carried truth. And maybe a little resignation. She wasn't worried about right or wrong anymore. Neither was I. We were past that. She sat down next to me, not saying anything for a minute. Then she told me she hadn't been with anyone since her divorce. Not emotionally. Not physically. I forgot what it felt like to be seen, she said. And I knew what she meant. She hadn't let anyone get close for a long time. And here I was close without even trying. She asked if I'd ever been in love. I said I wasn't sure. She looked at me carefully, then said, "You would know." I stayed quiet. Because whatever this was, it wasn't just infatuation. It had layers. It was risky and wrong by every social measure, but it was also real, in a way nothing else had been for me. She said she didn't want to hurt anyone. Not my mom.
Not me.
But that maybe we were already past that point. I said I'd been thinking the same thing. Neither of us tried to dress it up as harmless anymore. It wasn't harmless, but it was honest. We started seeing each other more. Quietly. Always when no one would notice. We stopped pretending it was innocent. Her touches lingered longer. My words were bolder. Our messages, once filled with hesitation, became declarations in disguise. I miss you. I wish this were easier. I don't feel alone when I talk to you. She told me she had dreams about us. That she would wake up feeling safe, even if it faded by morning. She asked what I dreamed about. I said I never remembered, but that being around her made me feel like I was exactly where I was supposed to be. Her eyes welled up a little. She said no one had said anything like that to her in years. There was no label for what we were. Not dating. Not a fling. Something in between, or maybe something completely outside the rules. But it was intense. And addictive. She told me she looked forward to my messages more than anything else in her day. I told her I planned mine hours in advance just to make her laugh. It became a rhythm neither of us wanted to break. Then something happened. My mom started getting suspicious. Not of us, but of how often Clara came up in conversation. She made a joke about Clara being her other child. I forced a laugh, but it rattled me. I didn't tell Clara, but I started pulling back a little. Shorter replies. Less eye contact when we crossed paths in public. She noticed immediately. She sent one message. Did I lose you? I couldn't ignore it. I called her. I told her everything about my mom's comment, about how scared I was of ruining everything. She didn't tell me to relax or deny the risk. She just said, I'd rather have a little bit of truth than a lifetime of pretending. That line stuck with me. I knew what she meant, so I stopped pulling away. We got more careful but not distant. She became the person I confided in the most. When I had a bad day, I went to her. When something good happened, she was the first to know. I started to depend on her, and I could tell she was doing the same. It went beyond physical want. It became emotional need. She started showing me pieces of herself no one else saw. Old letters she never sent. Photos from before the divorce that she kept hidden. She told me about a miscarriage once. I didn't know what to say. I just held her hand. That was the night I realized I wasn't in control anymore. I didn't want to be. We started talking about the future, not as a fantasy, but as a question. If things were different, she'd say. Or, do you ever think we'd work outside of this? I always said yes, because I believed it. In a world where timing didn't matter and people didn't judge, I could have loved her without fear. But this wasn't that world. One day, she asked if I'd be okay if we stopped. Not because she wanted to, but because she couldn't keep walking this line. I told her I didn't know. I meant it. She said she didn't know either, but she thought about it sometimes. That maybe this was the last time in her life she'd ever feel anything this real, and that scared her. We agreed not to decide anything yet, but there was a weight between us now. The high was still there, but it came with the shadow of an ending. Every look carried the question, how much longer? The risk of being caught increased. My mom mentioned Clara less often, which somehow made me more paranoid. I knew she'd notice if she found out how often I was still going over there. And Clara started getting quieter. Not distant, just thoughtful. Like she was preparing herself for something she didn't want but saw coming anyway. Then one night, as I was leaving, she said, if this ends, I want you to know it wasn't fake for me. I told her I already knew. And I did. That night, I couldn't sleep. The line between love and disaster had blurred beyond recognition. We were both trying to protect something that maybe never should have existed, but it had. And it was beautiful and messy and absolutely unforgettable. She texted me one morning saying she needed to talk. No emojis, no small talk, just those words. I knew from the tone that something had shifted again. I told her I'd come by. The wait between that message and seeing her felt longer than it was. I walked in and she didn't smile. Her energy was different. Not cold, just serious. Like she'd finally come to a conclusion she didn't want to reach, but couldn't avoid anymore. She told me her ex had reached out. Not to get back together, but to talk, to co-parent better, to maybe repair whatever was left between them. She made it clear she didn't want him back, but it complicated things. And she hated how fast it made her think about consequences. "We've been in a bubble," she said. "And I think it's about to pop." I didn't say anything at first. I just listened. She went on. "I don't regret anything we've done. But I've been thinking about what it's doing to you. You're young. You have your whole life ahead. And I don't want to be the reason you look back and feel like something got stolen from you." That hit me in a way nothing else had. Because it wasn't rejection, it was care. Real care. The kind that comes from loving someone enough to let go. I told her I didn't feel stolen from. I told her this, us, had meant more to me than anything else ever had. She nodded, and I could see she believed me. But I could also see that her mind was already walking ahead, down a path I hadn't wanted to imagine yet. She said she hadn't slept much. That she'd been playing out every outcome. "I thought I could handle it," she said. "But the truth is, I think I've fallen too hard." I told her I had too. And that's when we both went quiet again. Not because we had nothing to say, but because we'd finally said everything. She didn't ask me to leave. I just knew it was time. I stood up, and she followed. She didn't hug me, didn't touch me, just stood there with that same look, the one that held guilt, love, fear, and something else I still can't name. I walked out without looking back, because if I had, I wouldn't have left. The days that followed were the quietest of my life. My phone didn't light up with her name anymore. I didn't pass by her house. I didn't try to accidentally run into her. It was like ripping off a bandage every single hour. But I respected it. I respected her decision because I knew it wasn't about lack of feeling. It was the opposite. It was too much. Then one night, a week later, she messaged me. Just, "I miss you. So much it hurts." I didn't answer right away. I stared at it for an hour. Then I replied, "Me too." That was all. No planning, no drama. Just truth. She didn't reply after that. I think we both knew we couldn't reopen it without falling right back in. I started filling my time with distractions, friends, work, noise. But nothing really touched the space she left behind. Every time I walked into a room, I looked for her, even when I knew she wouldn't be there. I saw her in things that had nothing to do with her, an expression, a song, a sentence. She was everywhere and nowhere. One day, I bumped into my mom at home while she was on the phone with Clara. Just a normal conversation, laughter, updates. I couldn't move. I just listened. And Clara's voice was perfectly calm. No cracks. No hesitation. She was performing normal again. And she was good at it. I had to leave the room before my mom saw my face. Later that night, I wrote a message I never sent. I told her everything I couldn't say in person, how I still checked for her name, how I still remembered the way her hand felt brushing against mine, how every room felt colder without her in it. I wrote it all, then deleted it. Not because I didn't mean it, but because I knew it wouldn't help either of us. Weeks passed, then months. The silence settled into something like acceptance. The feelings never disappeared, they just changed shape. Softer. Quieter. Less about wanting, more about remembering. I didn't replace her. I didn't try. Because I knew no one else would ever occupy the same space in me. Eventually, I heard she was dating someone. A man her age. Kind, safe, predictable. I didn't feel jealousy. Just a hollow sort of ache. Like I'd watched someone close a door I still stood behind. I hoped he made her laugh the way I did. I hoped she felt seen. Because she deserved that, even if it wasn't coming from me anymore. My mom asked about her sometimes casually. I'd nod, answer vaguely. I got good at pretending it didn't shake me. Got good at being neutral. But sometimes at night, when the house was still, I'd replay everything. Every glance. Every touch. Every moment when we stood on the edge of something dangerous and chose to jump anyway. I never hated her for ending it. I respected it. Because what we had wasn't built to last in the world we lived in. It was a fire meant to burn fast and bright and leave a mark that didn't fade. And it did. It changed me. She changed me. I saw love differently after her, not as something safe or simple, but as something that could break every rule and still feel right. Years from now, if someone ever asks me if I've ever really loved someone, I'll think of her. I might not say it out loud. I might just smile and say, once. But in my heart, it'll be her. The one who saw me when no one else did. The one who gave me something real, even when it had no place in the world we lived in. And maybe that's what love is sometimes. Not a story with a happy ending, but a story that mattered anyway. Even if it broke rules. Even if it broke hearts. Even if it never made sense. It was ours. And I'll never forget it.